Here's how we like our bosses in video games. Big, scary, and, crucially, killed by us to much celebration and rejoicing. Annoying then that some bosses in games manage to escape the punishment they so sorely deserve by being deleted from the game before it's released, ruthlessly cut during development, with the result that you'll never get a proper chance to kick their butts. These are the deleted boss fights you'll never get to play. Beware spoilers for the following games.
Anyone who's played Bloodborne will tell you it has no shortage of horrible dogs. There are small angry dogs, big on-fire dogs, even ordained dogs. Take a bow, Vicar Amelia. Could I book you for a christening next Sunday, Vicar? Something tells me you have availability. With such a surfeit of dogs or dog-adjacent beast enemies in Bloodborne, it's perhaps not surprising that one highly hound-centric boss battle ended up cut from the game. But it is a shame because it would have been a real doozy. The deleted boss in question is known as the Great One Beast, which suggests an affiliation with the Great Ones. Powerful godlike entities in the world of Bloodborne that can exist across multiple planes of reality, eldritch beings worshipped since time immemorial that hold sinister sway over the land of Yharnam, and when they're not doing that, just wave their own placentas around while screaming. It'll be the next big TikTok craze, you just watch. The Great One Beast, however, manages to comport itself with considerably more dignity, and while it exists in the game only as code fragments, what exists can be found and fought in one of the game's user-made chalice dungeons. Doing so gives you a tempting taste of what a fully fledged boss fight against this enormous hound could have been like. That is to say, effin' scary. Because, as well as being physically imposing with its streaming fur, glowing red eyes, and enormous teeth, the Great One Beast's attacks are similarly fearsome. The full boss fight would surely have featured plenty of these scything claw combos. And we can imagine many players having their day thoroughly ruined by this extremely aggressive floating lunge attack. When the Great One Beast isn't flying through the air towards you with its claws out, and it often is, it summons what we have to assume would, in the full game, have been some sort of alien magic in keeping with its Great One mates. This piercing howl will shred your health bar even if you're nowhere near the dang thing, fatally if you're not careful. Although Bloodborne does, as we've mentioned, offer plenty of horrible dogs and eldritch nightmares to fight in the full game, it's hard not to feel a pang of regret that this beastly boss fight ended up on the cutting room floor. Those determined to encounter it can find the Chalice Dungeon glyph that will get you there with a quick Google search, but as you're messing with deleted content that's prone to weirdness, definitely back up your save first. Also, maybe don't go into the fight with over 233,000 blood echoes on you. Yeah, I don't think I'm getting them back.
There you are. I wondered what was keeping you. Hope you didn't have any trouble finding me.
Half-Life 2 is memorable for many reasons. Its clever puzzles, for instance, wonderful characters, or genius notions for integrating secret laboratories seamlessly into the home.
Oh, and by the way, nice to finally meet you.
Slick. You still better be able to get a Coke, though. One thing Half-Life 2 is slightly less memorable for, though, is boss fights, being, as it is, generally reluctant to follow the traditional video game formula of dropping you in a huge arena with a single big enemy. After all, Gordon Freeman is a theoretical physicist, easily able to find more cunning ways to overcome his enemies than shoot the thing with your gun until it explodes. maybe he's more theoretically a physicist than a theoretical physicist. It's an important distinction. Seeing as there aren't many boss fights in Half-Life 2, you might be surprised to learn that there are even fewer than there could have been. Meet the Hydra, a water-dwelling enemy that ended up cut from the game and that would, deleted game maps suggest, have been faced by Freeman in a boss fight showdown. We don't know how that would have looked, but the Hydra's presence in demo videos shown over a year before the game's release does tell us that the Hydra was fearsome indeed, despite looking like a rebellious tapeworm on its way to an EDM festival. We can forget the tapeworm comment, right? Old buddy, old pal. Made of luminous, gooey flesh, the Hydra was the brainchild of Half-Life 2 team member Ted Bachman, who worked on the movement and physics of the creature for half a year. Entire areas of the game had been designed around a Hydra encounter, but in the end it was decided that battling the glowing monster's many tentacles was too confusing in first person. And so the Hydra was sadly cut from Half-Life 2, along with the chance for you, the player, to fight it. A move Bachman describes as painful but necessary, though he has said that he'd still like to see this in the Half-Life universe somewhere. Well, I can think of the perfect game to put it in, Valve. Alien Swarm 2.
If you finished Metroid Prime, you might be left with the feeling that something important got forgotten. What could it be? Losing all your powers at the start of the game? No, that's in there. Bit where you have to escape an exploding facility against a countdown timer? No, that's in there too.
Evacuate immediately.
It might not be until much later that you sit bolt upright like Kevin's mum in Home Alone and yell, "Kraid!" That's right, Kraid is home alone! I mean, not in the game! For the uninitiated, Kraid is a large, scaly alien lizard with 3 eyes who shows up in Metroid games with alarming regularity, seeing as he doesn't exactly look capable of moving out of this room, let alone into an entirely different game. Metroid hero Samus has fought Kraid many times, to the point that in the recent Metroid Dread she seems almost bored. What is it, Kraid? Firing spikes out of your belly again? Change the record, Kraid. Kraid is notably absent from Metroid Prime, his presence limited to a name drop in the manual that says the devious space pirates are busy elsewhere resuscitating Kraid along with other Metroid mainstays Mother Brain and Ridley. This scaly wrong'un was going to have a much more prominent role, however, as there were indeed plans for a Kraid battle in Metroid Prime. A meeting with Kraid was mentioned in early press for the game, and concept art from the game's development shows a Kraid very much up to his old tricks, by which we mean firing fingernails out of 35 belly buttons. Ultimately, it seems the tight production time meant that Kraid was cut from the game, though. To be fair, Metroid fans can't exactly say they haven't had enough opportunities to kick Kraid scaly behind. On the other hand, it is something of a shame that Kraid was cut, for the simple reason that Metroid Prime was the first Metroid game in 3D, and it would have been cool to see how a familiar fight played out in more than 2 dimensions. Deleted Game Archive Unseen64 quotes an anonymous ex-Retro Studios employee who described the planned boss fight as featuring Kraid at one end of a cavern. The room would also contain rickety platforms that Kraid could tip over. The player's job in one phase would have been to climb to the top and trigger something to fall on Kraid, which would have at least been a bit different. Seriously, we have to mix it up. Samus is visibly bored.
A temporary setback, a minor hindrance, a trivial impediment. I'll just move along. I'll deal with you later, Alice. You'll never stop our grand plan.
Nothing quite ruins a tea party like the guests revolting and starting an industrial revolution. But that's exactly what has happened in Alice Madness Returns, the second instalment of American McGee's dark goth twist on a children's classic.
Fight the good fight. Work until you expire. Substantial rewards in heaven. It is better to give labor than to receive pay for it. Words to live by. You can eat them too.
Upon Alice's return to a crumbling wonderland, she finds that the Dormouse and the March Hare have abandoned unbirthday parties in favour of tearing the Mad Hatter into pieces and turning him into part of their horrible machinery. I mean, I've heard of people wanting to run a company, but this is just silly. It's up to you to get the Mad Hatter's limbs back, but the Dormouse and March Hare both run away before you can get anywhere near them, the cowards. So when you reach the end of the level, you're pretty pumped when a huge mecha appears and you get to take down the animal versions of Jeff Bezos.
Abandon false hope. Forget the past. The damage is done.
Let the madness begin. Resume the honey.
With a drill arm and hammer hand, this looks like it's going to be a fight to remember. That is until the mecha gets immediately destroyed when it's smashed on the head with a giant teapot.
Oh no.
Yup, the freshly reassembled Mad Hatter took the Megabot out in one hit, which is doubly annoying when he had just been taken out of the picture in the cutscene beforehand.
Put me down this instant.
Some saw this as a subversion of the boss at the end of the level cliché, but at one point this mecha was supposed to be a boss battle. Its arms would have smashed the floor around Alice, and Alice would have shot at the big glowy ring in the middle. But things get cut during the development process, and this battle was one of them for Alice Madness Returns. In now deleted forum posts, American McGee said he couldn't remember exactly why it was cut, other than the fight being, quote, frustrating. And that there was only one guy working on every boss/enemy AI, and he simply ran out of time to do everything they had hoped to do. So this bot battle got binned. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to say something here, but we only had one guy working on the script, and he simply ran out of time to do everything that they'd hoped to do.
I've got the last joke, am I too late?
Yeah.
Oh, but it was going to be your mecha me so mad.
It'll have to be DLC, sorry.
The game Cuphead was so long in development we can't even remember when work on it began. Want to say 1928? That would explain how it looks and sounds. No, actually, work on this rock-hard run-and-gun platformer began in 2010, before it was first shown publicly in the summer of 2014 at the E3 Games Conference, with a launch planned for 2015. The feeling of an interminable wait was down to the fact that the game A wouldn't actually be released until over 3 years later, and B looked frickin' good. Being so long in development, however, meant that some things we saw early on didn't make the final cut. Some did, for example the boss battle against Goopy Legrand, seen here in 2014 and then still present in the finished game, an early boss who exists to let you know that Cuphead is a game that will hurt your feelings very badly and often. One boss who cannot hurt you, however, is this demonic bat, because between the 2014 unveiling and the game's release, it was cut from the game. Glimpses of the bat are few and far between, but it would have been fought in a fiery arena, possibly even in hell, which is where you end up at the very end of the game for a dramatic showdown with the devil himself.
Great flame and
Which suggests the demonic bat could have been one of the last bosses players faced, and even more rock-hard than the other already rock-hard bosses in the game. We know little of how the fight would have played out, except that one phase would have seen a coffin wrenched open, freeing a swarm of smaller, doubtless very hard to dodge bats. It's a shame there's no sign of the Demon Bat in the final game, having spent literal years watching and re-watching its debut in the 2014 trailer, but take solace in the fact that there is still a boss phase where things fly out of you out of a coffin. Thank goodness?
When humanity discovered the mass relays, when we learned there was more to the galaxy than we imagined, there were some who thought the relays should be destroyed.
Quite surprising to find the Illusive Man on this list. Guess he wasn't so elusive after all.
Actually, it's Illusive Man, as in illusory or deceptive.
The Illusive Man in Mass Effect is the puppet master of human survivalist group Cerberus. His name is as confusing as his hair is good and his face is Martin Sheen's. If you play the Mass Effect trilogy, you'll spend a lot of time in his company, as he's the one who sends you on many of your missions in the second game.
I just wanted you to know I appreciate the risk you're taking. Regardless of your opinion of Cerberus, of me, you are a valuable asset to all of humanity.
By the end of the third game, however, things have gone somewhat sideways for this chain-smoking Machiavelli. In a bid to control the ancient alien Reapers to suit his own ends, the Illusive Man finds himself indoctrinated and under the control of those very aliens.
No! I'm in control! No one is telling me what to do!
Something he seems surprised by, even though his face is, well, gone all Star Wars.
No! No!
That's step 1 in checking if you're evil, Illusive Man. Come on! In a final conversation in Mass Effect 3, you defeat the Illusive Man either by killing him yourself or forcing him to realise he's under Reaper control. At one stage, however, this showdown was going to be a lot less chatty and a lot more shooty, as scrapped plans would have had you boss battle against a transformed Illusive Man Reaper creature. Concept art showed a gigantic Illusive Man covered in robot cabling and claws, like something you'd fight at the end of a Resident Evil game if Resident Evil was in space, which frankly, we would love it to be. Wait, that's Dead Space. Hooray! I got what I want! This wasn't the only tabled plan for an Illusive Man boss fight. In a Eurogamer interview, lead writer Mac Walters recalls a boss encounter where the Illusive Man would have been in control of a, quote, giant octo thing that you could fight, reminiscent of the giant mechanical human Reaper from the second game. It's spotted. Though perhaps that was scrapped because it would be even more of a stretch that the Illusive Man hadn't realised that he was the bad guy yet if he was driving a giant octo thing that looked like this. That's step 2 on checking if you're evil. Jeez, I guess that's eluding him.
Actually, it's elusive. No! Perhaps you think the residents of the post-nuclear wasteland of Fallout New Vegas have suffered enough. After all, they're forced to eke out a meagre living in the unforgiving, irradiated Nevada desert, where a bad day is getting your legs eaten by deathclaws, and a good day is that same thing happening, but the deathclaws are kind enough to kill you first. But that's why you don't work at Obsidian Entertainment, because those folks cannot get enough of punishing wastelanders, it seems. How else to explain the existence of Gojira, a gigantic fire lizard that exists in Fallout New Vegas only in secretly buried code, and was created by a developer for fun to unleash on the troops holed up in the game's Camp McCarran outpost. To be fair, Gojira isn't so much of a boss fight as a developer in-joke that got left in the game's code, and can only be summoned with the use of console commands. Although, those looking for a challenging fight could hardly do better. Gojira is the strongest creature in the game, with a health pool the size of the Pacific, dealing immense damage that will flash fry you in one very hot second. Don't feel too bad about it. Here's how a legendary Deathclaw, one of the strongest enemies in the proper game, manages in the same fight. Crispy. Gojira's name is a reference to the Romanized version of the Japanese name for Godzilla, although this particular giant reptile is marginally less keen on nuclear radiation than its namesake. It's also extremely similar in terms of its anatomy to the smaller geckos that can be found throughout the wasteland and are easily brained with a shovel. With the only real difference between Gojira and these geckos being its immense size, although that size does change up the vibe somewhat. Ew, hopefully it didn't see that business with the shovel earlier.
So those were the boss fights that became elusive to us, is that correct?
No, but yes, if it means you won't hurt me anymore. You got it, Ellen.
Thanks.
As usual.
If you enjoyed that video, please do give us a thumbs up. It really helps. And also, let us know which boss fight you wish you had been able to play in the comments below. Maybe you know of those secret boss fights that they're in the code maybe. They're somewhere. You can find them, but you can't play them. They're so close. Delicious boss fights. But if you enjoyed this, do thumbs up. Give us a subscribe if you haven't already, and check out these other videos. We promise they're not hidden. Look, you can find them. There's a playlist and everything. See you next time. Bye.